Everyone called her weak, too small, too quiet. She never fit in, and maybe she never tried to. While others laughed, she dreamed of something different, a home of her own, deep in the wild woods, far from cruel eyes. But when her village moved on without her, leaving her behind like an unwanted burden, the silence around her grew loud. The nights were colder, her hands trembled. She was just a girl, alone in a world too big. But then the ground shook. Heavy footsteps echoed through the trees. A giant figure appeared, taller than the pines, shadow stretching across the snow. She froze, heart pounding. Who was he? Why was he here? He didn't speak. He didn't stare. He simply looked at her broken shelter and started gathering wood. That moment changed everything. This isn't just a story of survival, it's about a girl the world forgot. And the giant, who remembered her. She was the smallest child anyone had seen, quiet, thin, barely reaching anyone's shoulder. While others played loud games, she sat near trees, drawing tiny houses in the dirt. She didn't speak much, but her eyes held stories no one cared to hear. The other children mocked her, called her names, pushed her aside. The adults said she was delicate, slow, and useless in the wild. But deep inside, she carried a dream to live in the forest, in a cabin she built with her own hands. Nobody believed her. They laughed when she collected twigs or talked to birds. Then, one winter morning, her village packed their things. She thought they would call her. They didn't. She ran after them, but they didn't look back, left behind. In the frost, she stood alone, tiny, shivering, forgotten. All she had was the forest, her dream, and a heart that still believed someone would find her. She stood still as the wind howled through the trees, her fingers numb, her breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. The village was gone. No path, no people, no warmth, just endless snow and towering woods. Her legs trembled, but she walked anyway, one slow step after another. She didn't cry, not yet. She still hoped someone would return for her. But no voices came, no shadows appeared. Only the silence of the forest, heavy and unforgiving. Days passed. She drank melted snow, chewed on dry bark, and spoke to herself just to remember how her voice sounded. Her tiny hands tried to stack sticks, building something that might shield her from the cold. But each time the wind knocked it down, her fingers bled, her stomach ached. She curled under branches at night, teeth chattering, hugging herself tight, whispering that morning would come, that she'd be okay. But even hope started to fade. Animals watched her from a distance, wolves in the dark, owls overhead, even a bear once, but none came close. Maybe even they knew she didn't belong here. She tried again to build a shelter. Her hands shook, and her eyes blurred with tiredness. The sticks fell once more. She dropped to her knees and buried her face in her arms. Maybe this was how it ended, not with a scream, but with silence. Then a sound broke the stillness. A low, deep crunch, like something massive stepping on frozen leaves. Her head snapped up. She turned slowly, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Another step, then another, heavy, calm, close. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it a bear? A man? Something worse? She scrambled backward, hiding behind the broken pieces of her shelter. The footsteps grew louder, clearer, until a shadow stretched across the snow, long and wide. Swallowing the light, she dared to peek. What she saw didn't make sense. A tall figure, taller than any man she had ever seen, stood still, wrapped in layers of fur, hair braided down his chest, skin weathered by years under the sun. His eyes were dark, calm, unreadable. He didn't speak. He didn't move closer. Just looked at her, then at the broken sticks beside her. She didn't speak either, her voice lost somewhere between fear and confusion. He slowly bent down, picked up a fallen branch, examined it, then began gathering more. Without a word, he started placing them carefully, forming a wall, solid, strong, stable. She blinked, unable to move. Who was he? Why was he helping her? He didn't ask who she was. He didn't ask what happened. He just built. And as he worked, something inside her, something small but unbroken, began to rise. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of warmth, not from the cold fire she failed to light, but from a stranger whose shadow was big enough to hold. Her fears, she sat frozen, watching the giant man move with calm, heavy steps. He picked up branches with large, careful hands and placed them in a pattern she had never thought of. Every movement was silent, focused, and sure. He didn't glance at her. He didn't ask questions. He just worked like he had already decided she needed shelter and he would build it. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Something about him silenced the world around her. His height, his strength, his quiet presence. He wore thick layers of animal skin, weathered and old, and his hair was long, dark, and braided with feathers. His boots sank deep into the snow, yet he moved like the forest had always known him. Her fear slowly began to fade, replaced by confusion and something even stronger, trust. She didn't know his name, but she felt no danger. He built all day. When her eyes grew heavy, he pointed gently toward a warmer corner near the tree roots. She crawled there, too tired to question. That night, as the wind blew harder and snow fell again, she watched him sit outside by the half-finished shelter, sharpening a wooden tool. He wasn't just tall, he was massive, like a walking tree, but his face held no anger, only silence, only peace. In the morning, she woke to the smell of something cooking. A pot rested on stones. Steam rose. Her mouth watered. He handed her a small bowl, then walked away again, saying nothing. She wanted to say thank you, but he was already busy chopping logs, tying vines, placing stones. He built like he had done it 1,000 times before, and slowly, day by day, the broken pile of sticks transformed into a real cabin. She helped where she could, carrying smaller pieces, arranging things, learning how to do things she never knew before. He taught without speaking, showing by doing. Sometimes he'd nod, and she understood. Sometimes he'd pause, and she followed. He was Comanche. That much she understood from the symbols carved into the wood and the way he moved, like the land was part of him. She had heard stories about warriors like him, proud, powerful, distant, but none of the stories told of one who built for a lost, tiny girl in the woods. She still didn't know why he helped her. She still wondered if he would leave one day, without a word, just like he came. But something told her he wasn't here by chance. Maybe he had once been left behind too. Maybe he knew what it meant to be forgotten. Or maybe, deep in his silence, he saw her not as small but as someone who still had something to become. Whatever the reason, the girl who had been abandoned now had walls around her, a fire to sleep beside, and a giant who didn't just save her. He believed she was worth saving. Each day, the cabin grew stronger, and so did she. The walls rose, tall and firm, the roof sealed tightly with branches and bark. It wasn't just a shelter, it was a promise that she was no longer alone. The giant Comanche taught her without words. He showed her how to choose the right wood, how to stack fire properly, how to listen to the forest for signs of danger or safety. She followed his lead, watched his hands closely, and memorized every motion. At first, she failed, often dropping things, cutting wrong, but he never scolded her. He just did it again, slower, waiting for her to learn. The forest, once cold and terrifying, began to feel like home. She found paths between trees, noticed the animals, learned where to find water that was safe to drink. Her cheeks grew less pale, her fingers steadier, her eyes brighter. She no longer looked like the small, helpless girl who had been left behind. Inside her, something was changing. Her voice grew more confident, even though they still spoke little. He didn't need words to teach, and she didn't need them to understand. But in the quiet, a bond grew between them stronger than sound, built on silence, effort, and trust. They shared meals by the fire. Sometimes he carved wood while she fixed baskets or folded blankets. Once, during a storm, they sat in the corner of the cabin, listening to thunder shake the earth, and he handed her a carved feather, delicate and smooth. She held it tightly that night and never let it go. As weeks passed, she no longer feared the silence. She had grown into it, like roots into soil. Still, questions lived inside her. Why had he helped her? Why had he come at all? One evening, after they finished placing stones around the fire pit, she finally asked in a soft, hesitant voice, "Why did you help me?" He paused, hands resting on his knees, then looked at her with eyes that carried something deep, memories maybe pain. He gave a quiet smile and said, "Because someone once helped me too." That was all, just one line, but it filled the room. Like thunder, she didn't ask more, she didn't need to. In that moment, she understood. He had known the weight of being forgotten. He had felt the cold of being alone, and long ago, when he had needed someone, someone had chosen not to walk away. Now, it was his turn to do the same. That night, as she lay beside the warm fire inside the strong cabin they had built together, she stared at the wooden ceiling and whispered into the dark, "Thank you." She knew he heard. Even if he didn't answer, in the heart of the wild, far from noise and people, a girl who was once left behind had found something she never expected, a home built by strength, held together by silence, and lit by kindness that needed no explanation. Years turned quietly like pages in a book only the forest could read. The girl, once left behind, became a woman of strength, calm and steady like the trees around her. Her cabin, built with hands that once trembled, now stood proud and warm, welcoming those who had lost their way. Travelers spoke of the place where silence healed and kindness lived in the wood. Children sat by her fire, listening wide-eyed as she told them the story not of pain, but of rising. She never forgot the man with the braided hair and gentle strength. His shadow still lived in the walls, in every beam and corner. She often whispered thanks to the wind, hoping it would find him, and though she never saw him again, the world remembered them both. For in the wild, where small things once broke, stood a cabin proof that the smallest hearts can hold the greatest strength.